Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 77th episode of the Inbox. Starting off with a question from Spot On saying, if you looked at the prices in UEC for missiles and torpedoes in the CIG store, look at the size 9 torpedo prices at 70,000 UEC for only 2 torpedoes. At that rate, a loadout of torpedoes in the Polaris would be a massive 980,000 in UEC. At $1 per 1K UEC value in the store, hell, the loadout is way more expensive than the entire ships. Any thoughts there, Youngblood? Yeah, I think the simplest answer there is just the fact that it goes to show what these ships are going to cost to earn in-game. We've heard that come right out of Chris Roberts' mouth after Gamescom last year, I think. I did a video on it, on how things are going to escalate in price. But I think what you're starting to see there is a combination of two things. One is the escalation in pricing of ships. And then the other one is going to be that the value in Voyager Direct is probably not a direct reflection of where things are going to be. Voyager Direct has a ton of problems. One being that you can't melt with them. The values that's assessed is a problem. It's going to be going away and it's going to be turned into in-game type of purchases. So there's a lot of issues with Voyager Direct. So you can't necessarily look at it and draw a one-to-one conclusion on what things are going to be. But I think more than anything, it is pointing towards the way things are, heading. We know ships are going to cost a lot more. We know that we're buying them at a severe discount now with real cash compared to what it's going to cost in its equivalency later on down the line. So, does that necessarily mean that I think the Polaris is going to jump, up to, I don't know, the equivalent of a, $30,000 ship or something like that? No, I don't think so. But I think you're going to see some very steep increases, and I think this is just kind of something that points us in that direction. But yeah, I wouldn't be buying torpedoes with real money right now if you're only getting 2 of them. Samuel Gerardo says, hey STL, love your work, thank you. I know that right now we have single-person emotes like waving and flipping people off, but I was wondering if you think multi-person emotes would ever be implemented. These could be as simple as 2 players sharing a high five, or they could have actual gameplay purposes like boosting someone up to climb a wall. Yeah, I think we are going to see multi-person emotes taking place, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to just be emotes. Like, for example, I think a high five is something that falls in that emote category. I think that probably will be implemented. Whether you can actually boost somebody up to climb a wall, I don't know. I haven't necessarily seen that. We've seen vaulting and other things that they've put into the game, but not necessarily boosting someone up. I think other places where you're going to have multiplayers like interacting, maybe people carrying heavy objects together. We're just now starting to see carrying cargo, but the box is like 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. It's not a big box. So if you start talking about bigger items, maybe 2 or 3 people can all collaborate and end up moving something together. Or, maybe in combat, you can hand somebody else a magazine or something like that. So I think what they're developing is going to be complicated enough to where you're going to have multiplayer interaction like that. I just don't know if it's necessarily going to be boosting somebody up, but I think we are going to see some, multiplayer things tying together. Lucas Amon says, Youngblood, will shipwright be a profession? I would love to make my own custom ship. It would be called the TAPS, the all-purpose ship, aka the Jack as in Jack of all trades. That I would do as a profession. Also, will privateer legal privacy or piracy to a degree be in the game? I don't think shipwright is going to be a profession. I don't think you're going to necessarily be able to just flat out make your own ship in game. Now, I think you could maybe open up, Lucas's custom shop and you could maybe upgrade existing ships. But I don't know if we're going to see uglies, and I don't think we're going to see like handcrafted ships. I don't think that's going to be within the game, because you look at the fidelity and the process that goes into building the ships today, and it takes a ton of work, and then you have to do like all these optimization things. So I think you could probably create a custom ship through all the components that you're adding in, and then sell those as, look, this is going to be the best performing Hornet on the market because of what I do to it. But you're not going to necessarily say this is a pseudo Hornet that's combined with a Gladius, so you get the speed and the firepower. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to do that. As far as privateer goes, yeah, I think that is going to be in there. It's probably going to be tied to like government and like factions and things like that. There's always going to be ramifications though, so maybe something that you do is technically considered legal, but it's probably going to impact you through the reputation system in some way. So I think you'll see some of that, but I don't think you're going to be getting off scot-free for stealing from somebody, because somebody's going to be pissed. Circle of Owls says, when do you think we'll be able to purchase new ships with in-game currency? For me, Star Citizen gameplay is all about earning your way in the verse, so I prefer to be able to use my starter ship to build wealth until I'm able to upgrade it. I don't know. I think this is going to be a tricky one, because I think what we're going to see is like 3.0 gives us planetary landings and more missions, and then all of a sudden we start getting more and more careers that are coming in, and that's all building towards the economy and the economy being in place. I'm guessing we're probably talking closer to 4.0 before that's actually implemented, but then you get into even more complicated things like you work forever, you buy this ship, and then boom, you hit a wipe and you lose everything. So I think they want to move it along or probably implement that at a point to where people aren't going to be real upset about losing things that they've earned in game, because they're not going to probably carry things over like that because they are doing wipes along the way. So I think it's probably going to be closer to 4.0 or closer to beta before we're actually able to do that, but it's hard to say. I do think we'll continue to see ship rentals be available though, and hopefully what we'll see is you can actually rent ships in 3.0 or 3.1 or 3.2 in the universe. It's not just using rec to do that. You can actually use your UEC and then rent a ship with that. So that's what I'm hoping for as opposed to pure purchasing, but we'll just need to see. Punk125 says, what kind of computer setup do you use? Could you do a video of it? And do you think ultrawide monitors are a good choice for Star Citizen? I could do a video on it. I'm not sure if there's enough interest in that or not. My computer tends to be a little bit dusty. Cable management's moderate, so it's not like it's going to be some like flashy display type of situation. As far as the hardware that I've got going on, I've got an X370 motherboard, Ryzen R7 1700. I've got that on my SwiftTech H220. That's actually being powered by the two stock fans, plus I've got two 200 millimeter fans and another two 200 millimeter fans. I've got 16 gigabytes of 3200 RAM. Got an M.2 drive for my operating system. All my games are on SSD. 750 watt power supply, and I'm currently on a GTX 1080. So I'm not necessarily going to do a video on it because it's not really all that impressive. Like it's a great system, don't get me wrong. I love my system, but it's not necessarily like I'm going to show it to you and you guys are going to be like, oh, Youngblood's the computer master. I mean, that's not really like what I'm all about. But that being said, as far as the ultra-wide question, yeah, I think ultrawide monitors are a good choice for Star Citizen, but I think you do need to know that sometimes there's issues with the resolution on new patches and they have to fix them. So considering it's not your standard 16:9 ratio, there have been issues in the past. Like for example, your helmet still kind of comes in the middle, but then you see outside your helmet on the sides. It's just kind of an odd experience in that regard. But I do like the idea of being able to see wider, especially when you're in a cockpit. I think it helps with immersion, and I think it also helps with the overall, just situational awareness, I guess. For me, I'm not going to use an ultra-wide monitor, but that comes more down to content. I don't want to put up content on YouTube with videos that are in 16:9, and you're going to end up having these black bars in place, just because I'm on an ultra-wide monitor and I'm recording at that resolution. So, for me, I'm not going to go that route, but I know a lot of people are, and they're excited about it. Alejo Ruiz Camauer says, hey Youngblood, when do we get to use the P52 on the Connie? I don't know. They've talked about working on it. It was on the roadmap. I'm personally going to say that's in like 3.2 or so. It's a really complicated thing to try and work out as far as the way the ship's actually docking and going to be able to be deployed. You're talking about physics grids. You're talking about the different like orbits and things that they have actually interior. Then you're talking about the mechanics in game of actually connecting and disconnecting. So I think it's going to be a little bit longer than we want it to be, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Sketchy says, do you think, and these are our two patron questions, Sketchy says, do you think there will be any indicators for people's skill level, i.e. a way to know this guy is a good engineer for real players, not NPCs? I don't necessarily think somebody's going to look at you and be like, oh, because you're wearing that badge, you're a master engineer. I think what it's going to be more like is you've got a reputation system, and when people are researching you, they can see that you've done a lot of good engineer jobs or something like that. Or, if there's an engineering guild, for example, and they see that you're in high status with that guild, then you have a higher likelihood of that. Or maybe you're able to do something like on a trade board to where you say, I'm putting up my services here. Here's kind of my credentials, like those types of things. So I don't think it's going to be necessarily immediately apparent, but I think there's going to be something that shows it if somebody wants to do that research. And the last question is from Jiraiya, says, do you think extra fuel can be carried in the cargo hold? Yeah, I mean, you could put a barrel of fuel in your cargo hold. You'd want to make sure that it's locked down via mag plates, otherwise that would be a really bad thing to be rattling around. But the trick there is you're not necessarily going to be able to just run a tube from, your your cargo container holding fuel to your engine, I think you're going to be able to transport fuel, but I don't think you're necessarily going to be able to tap in and actively use it. Now, if you have the ability to actually pull it out, EVA over, and dump it into your, fuel tank, then maybe that becomes an option. But I don't think it's going to necessarily be like just because you have fuel in your cargo hold, you've got longer range. So that's it for this episode of the Inbox. I appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for a lot more coming soon, and have a great day. Take care.